My ex-wife trained our two small children to sob and beg on camera just to squeeze extra cash out of me every single week until I finally caught her cruel game and turned the tables. Every Sunday night, I opened my phone and watched my own children cry for money. The video loaded slow, the way it always did. Owen's face filled the screen first, blotchy and red. 7 years old and already good at this. Lily sat beside him on their mother's white sectional, 5 years old, sniffling on command like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "Daddy won't help us," the caption read. Vanessa's voice, off camera, soft and encouraging. "Tell him what you need, baby." Lily looked straight into the lens. "We just want new shoes," she said, and her chin wobbled right on cue. I sat in my truck in the Kroger parking lot and watched it 4 times. Monday brought a text. "The kids are sobbing over the tablet situation. Can you send $300 by Thursday?" Tuesday. "Lily's been asking about leotards for weeks. $400 by Friday would mean everything to her." Wednesday. "Owen's sneakers are falling apart. I hate to ask again, but he needs them today. I already sent $1,500 a month. Exactly what the Franklin County Court ordered. I covered half of every doctor's visit. I paid for swim lessons and Lily's dance recital costume outright. But somewhere in the last 6 months, Vanessa had found a formula that worked better than any court order. Tears turned into cash faster than anything else she'd tried. I paid all of it. Every request. Every week. I told myself I was protecting Owen and Lily from feeling poor, from feeling like their parents' divorce had cost them anything at all. I told myself that for 6 months. Then one Saturday afternoon, I heard Lily talking to her stuffed rabbit in the hallway outside her room, and everything I'd been telling myself came apart in about 4 seconds. I need to back up. My name's Mark Delaney. I'm 36. I've spent 11 years as a structural engineer for a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. The kind of job that pays well, but never makes anyone rich. I met Vanessa Cole in 2014 at a wedding in Dublin, Ohio, of all places. A groomsman's cousin, a bride I barely knew. Vanessa ran the event. She was 26 then, sharp in a black blazer, moving through a room of 200 people like she owned the air in it. I asked her to dinner before the reception ended. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We married 2 years later, in October 2016, at a vineyard outside Granville. Owen came in March 2019. Lily followed in June 2021. For a while it was good. I mean that honestly. It was good enough that when it started going wrong, I spent a long time refusing to see it. Vanessa left her event planning job when Owen was born. That was our decision together, on paper. In practice, it meant our household ran on my salary alone, $118,000 a year at the time, while Vanessa built a life that assumed a second income we didn't have, a leased Lexus RX in 2020, a wardrobe that outpaced both our closets combined. I brought it up more than once. She always had an answer. "This is how I contribute, Mark. I represent this family." I let it go more times than I can count, because arguing about money felt smaller than the life we were building. Here's the incident that means something now. That meant nothing at the time. In the spring of 2022, when Owen was 3 and Lily was 10 months old, Vanessa started an Instagram account called Our Sweet Delaney Life. I thought it was baby photos and holiday outfits. It was mostly. But I remember one afternoon in April, Owen crying in his high chair because Vanessa wouldn't give him more crackers, and Vanessa reaching for her phone instead of reaching for him. She filmed 40 seconds of him sobbing, captioned it, "Toddler meltdowns are humbling," and posted it before she ever picked him up. It got 11,000 likes. A protein bar company sent her free samples the next week and asked if she'd tag them in future posts. She was thrilled. I remember thinking it was strange and letting the thought go, the way I let a lot of things go back then. There was another incident, smaller, that I only understood later for what it was. Owen's 4th birthday, March 2023, a party at a trampoline park off Sawmill Road that cost $680 for 12 kids and 2 hours of jump time. Vanessa insisted on a reveal video for the cake, Owen's face lighting up on camera, except when the moment actually came, Owen was distracted by a friend and barely reacted. Vanessa made him blow out the candles twice more, off camera, coaching him between takes. "Bigger smile, bud. Like you mean it." I filmed none of it myself. I just watched her direct our son's joy like it was a scene that needed another take, and I remember feeling a flicker of something uneasy that I didn't have a name for yet. The video went up that night, captioned about how blessed we were, and it got shared by a local parenting page with 40,000 followers. Vanessa mentioned, almost offhand, that pages like that sometimes paid for usable family content. I didn't ask how much. I wish now that I had. Money was a fault line under the marriage long before either of us said the word divorce out loud. In the fall of 2023, I found a credit card statement in a kitchen drawer, a card I didn't know existed, opened in Vanessa's name alone, carrying a balance of $6,200. When I asked about it, she cried before I finished the question, and somehow, within 20 minutes, I was the one apologizing for going through the mail. That pattern repeated itself so many times over our marriage that I'd stopped noticing it as a pattern. A concern raised, tears deployed, the concern buried under the tears, an apology extracted from the person who'd raised it in the first place. I didn't have language for it then. I have language for it now. We separated in January 2024. The divorce finalized that September, after after 8 years of marriage. The split wasn't ugly by divorce standards. No affairs, no restraining orders, just two people who'd stopped choosing each other somewhere around year 6 and finally admitted it out loud. Judge Patricia Yoon signed off on joint legal custody, primary residence with Vanessa, standard visitation for me every other weekend and Wednesday evenings, and child support set at $2,500 a month based on my income and hers, which she'd reported as minimal freelance work. I think about the years before all of that too, because I don't want to make this sound like a marriage that was always heading toward a courtroom. It wasn't. We took the kids to the Outer Banks every summer, rented the same beach house on Ocean Boulevard 3 years running. Vanessa used to fall asleep on my shoulder during the drive down, every single time, 12 hours in the car, and she never once stayed awake past Charleston. I used to think that was one of the truest things about her, that unguarded, unphotographed hour somewhere on I-95 where she wasn't performing anything for anyone. I held on to memories like that for a long time after the divorce, long after I probably should have let them go. I think some part of me kept paying her demands for 6 months because I still wanted to believe that woman in the car was the real one, and the woman filming our children's tears was some temporary version I could wait out. For the first 4 or 5 months after the divorce, things were almost functional. Vanessa texted about school events. I picked the kids up on time. We split holidays without lawyers. I thought foolishly that we might actually manage this well. Then, around March of last year, the videos started. At first they were small. A photo of Owen's shoes with a hole starting at the toe, captioned with a request for $80. I sent it without thinking twice. Kids grow, shoes wear out. It seemed reasonable. By April, the requests had a rhythm to them. Monday brought a crisis. By Thursday, there was a deadline attached to it. I started noticing the pattern, but I didn't want to be the kind of father who counted pennies against his own children, so I kept paying. In May alone, I sent Vanessa $2,100 above and beyond the court-ordered support. Tablets, cleats, a field trip fee that turned out not to exist when I asked Owen's teacher about it directly. That's when I started really watching. I noticed the Lexus first, actually, a new one, this time an RX 350 in a shade of pearl white that hadn't existed on the lot 8 months earlier. Then the highlights, done professionally, the kind of subtle warm blonde that costs $200 and up at the salon on Sawmill Road. Then a bag I recognized from a display case at Easton Town Center, the kind of bag that cost more than my mortgage payment. I asked her about it once, carefully, over a custody exchange in the Target parking lot on Bethel Road. "Things seem to be going well for you," I said, trying to keep my voice light. She looked at me like I'd accused her of something. "Are you serious right now? I'm barely keeping my head above water mark. You have no idea what it costs to raise 2 kids essentially alone. I send $1,500 a month, plus everything else. $1,500 doesn't cover what you think it covers." She buckled Lily into her car seat with more force than necessary. "I don't know why you're doing this, making me defend myself in a parking lot like a criminal." I apologized. I actually apologized, standing there in that parking lot for noticing. That's the moment I understand now as the real turning point, though I didn't recognize it then. Gaslighting doesn't arrive with a warning label. It arrives disguised as your own overreaction. The videos kept coming. By June, they'd gotten more elaborate. Not just a phone propped on a counter, but framed shots, good lighting, Owen and Lily positioned on the good couch instead of their bedroom floor. Vanessa had learned, or maybe relearned, exactly how to make a shot land. I remembered our sweet Delaney life and the protein bars, and I felt something cold settle behind my sternum, though I still couldn't name what it was. Then came the Saturday with the rabbit. I'd picked the kids up early that week. A Wednesday evening switched to Saturday because of a work trip, and I was standing in the hallway of my own apartment on Sawyer Street, about to knock on Lily's door and tell her dinner was ready. Through the door, I heard her narrating to Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere, in the particular sing-song voice 5-year-olds use for imaginary conversations. "Okay, now you have to cry," she told the rabbit. "Not too loud, just like this." She demonstrated. It was, I'm ashamed to admit, a genuinely good performance. A wobbling lip, a catch in the throat, the kind of controlled crying that takes most adults years of practice to fake convincingly. Mommy says if I cry really hard, she buys me ice cream after. That's the game we play for Daddy. I stood in that hallway for a long time, long enough that my hands went cold, long enough that Lily finished her rehearsal and moved on to something else entirely, humming to herself, while I stood frozen 6 feet away, listening to my 5-year-old daughter treat manufactured sadness like a spelling word she was studying for a test. I didn't confront anyone that night. I made dinner. I read Lily her book about a dragon who was afraid of the dark. I tucked Owen in and told him I loved him and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. Then I sat at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning, staring at 6 months of bank transfers on my laptop screen, doing math I didn't want to finish. $300, $400, $200, $250, $180, $500. Week after week, month after month, I added it up. Since March, above and beyond the court-ordered support, I had sent Vanessa $9,840. I thought about calling a lawyer that night. I didn't, not yet. I wanted to be sure. I wanted proof that wouldn't collapse the second Vanessa looked wounded and asked me how I could think such things about the mother of my children. So instead, said. I built something of my own. The following Saturday, Owen and I went to the park on Riverside Drive, the one with the big wooden fort structure he loved. Another dad was there, a guy named Ray Tomlin, whose son played on Owen's rec league soccer team. Ray and I talk sometimes, the easy small talk of two men whose kids happen to like the same slide. I made sure Owen was close enough to hear, and I told Ray, a little too loud, a little too casual, that I'd sold my watch that week. My grandfather's watch, I said, just to keep things steady for the kids. Ray, who didn't know any better, said that was rough, man, and asked if I needed anything. I said we'd be fine. Owen didn't say anything at the park. But that night, back at Vanessa's house for the exchange, I heard him ask her in the kitchen whether Daddy skipped meals now. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was still in the doorway, shoes half off. But Owen's voice carries, and so did Vanessa's laugh. He's exaggerating, baby. Dad just doesn't want to share as much as he used to. I stood there another moment before I stepped fully inside. Neither of them noticed me until I said Owen's name. The next weekend at the McDonald's on Sawmill, I counted out exact change for 2 Happy Meals at the register and told the kids I wasn't hungry. It wasn't hard to sell. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and hunger has a way of showing on a person's face, even when you're doing it on purpose. Lily noticed first. She's always noticed things before Owen does. She pushed her box of nuggets toward me across the table. You can have some, Daddy. I'm not that hungry. I'm okay, sweetheart. You eat. She kept pushing the box an inch closer. I ate 2 nuggets because refusing felt worse than accepting, and something about the way she watched me chew made my chest hurt, in a way 6 months of Vanessa's videos never had. That night, back at Vanessa's, I heard Owen through her bedroom door again. I wasn't eavesdropping, not exactly. The walls in that house are thin, and the kids talk loud when they're upset. Daddy didn't eat today. He said he doesn't have money. I heard Vanessa's voice too, quieter this time, and something in it had an edge I hadn't heard before. He's lying, baby. Dad just doesn't want to share. The following weekend, both kids showed up to my apartment with backpacks heavier than usual. Lily produced 2 fruit cups from a side pocket, the plastic kind with the foil lid, and set them on my counter like an offering. Owen had made me a sandwich, peanut butter, badly assembled, wrapped in a paper towel, and smashed nearly flat in his backpack, and he handed it to me with the serious face he gets when he thinks he's doing something important. In case you're hungry, Dad, he said. I had to go into the bathroom and run the water so they wouldn't hear me. Vanessa found out, of course. Owen must have mentioned it, or Lily did, the way kids do without meaning any harm by it. 2 weeks later, she called and asked to meet, and we sat down at the Panera on Bethel Road, coffee going cold between us. The videos need to stop, I told her. They're confusing the kids. Owen thinks I'm starving myself. That's not okay, Vanessa. She twisted a napkin into a tight rope between her fingers, a habit I recognized from a decade of watching her manage stress. They're worried about you, she said. Do you know Owen tried to sell his Pokemon cards to a kid at school? For real money, Mark, because he thinks you can't afford to eat. I didn't say anything. I'd learned, slowly, painfully, that silence made her uncomfortable in a way that argument never did. She filled it herself, the way she always did. I don't understand why you're punishing me for loving our kids, she said, for being honest with them about how hard things are. How hard things are, I repeated. You have a new Lexus, Vanessa. That's leased. You know that. You know exactly what a lease is. Her voice climbed half a register. God, Mark, do you have any idea how exhausting it is, defending every single thing I do all the time forever? I paid for the coffee and left. 2 days after that conversation, Vanessa texted asking if she could film Owen and Lily at my apartment for what she called a sweet surprise for their cousins. I said yes because refusing something that small felt paranoid even after everything. She showed up Saturday morning with a ring light, an actual ring light, the kind streamers use, and set it up in my living room without asking. I watched from the kitchen as she arranged Lily on the couch and told her to think about something sad, baby, just for a second, for the camera. Lily's face crumpled on command. Vanessa got her shot in under a minute and packed the ring light away like she'd done it 100 times, which I understood by then she probably had. I asked her to leave. She looked genuinely confused, like I'd overreacted to something reasonable. It's for their cousins, Mark. Aunt Carol wanted to see how big they've gotten. I checked later. There was no cousins group chat. The video, cropped differently, with a new caption about another hard week, appeared on her public page 4 days later. Owen asked me why Aunt Carol never texted back about it. I told him I didn't know, because I didn't have the heart to tell a 7-year-old his mother had lied to both of us in the same sentence. 3 weeks of silence followed, the longest stretch since the divorce where neither of us initiated contact beyond the bare mechanics of custody exchange. I used that time. I opened a folder on my laptop. I started saving every video, every text, every bank transfer, time-stamped and organized by month. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing yet, not even my brother, who I usually told everything. During those 3 weeks, I also did something I'm not proud of, though I've made peace with it since. I asked Owen, gently, carefully, without leading him anywhere, what he and his mom usually did on the days she filmed him. I framed it as ordinary curiosity, the kind of question a dad asks about his kid's week. Owen answered without any hesitation at all, the way kids do when they don't yet understand a question could be strategic. He told me about the ring light. He told me she had a good size side of the living room she liked to use. He told me sometimes she'd redo a video 3 or 4 times if the crying didn't look real enough. I wrote every word down the second he went to bed, my hand shaking so badly the notes are barely legible now when I look back at them. I didn't like using my own son as a source. I've since decided that protecting him mattered more than my discomfort with how I got there. Then, on a Tuesday night in late September, Vanessa texted, "We need to talk in person. It's important." We met at a coffee shop near her house, a place called Grounded on High Street. She wore plain clothes that day, jeans, a gray sweatshirt, nothing with a logo I recognized, which told me more than anything she actually said. She looked tired in a way that felt, for the first time in months, like it might be real. "The videos got out of hand," she said, staring at her cup instead of at me. "I know that now. I want to fix this. A new arrangement. $500 a month, cash, no more videos, and we forget any of this happened." "Cash," I said. "It's simpler that way. You want me to pay you off the books, off the court order, so there's no paper trail of what you were doing to our kids." Her face changed instantly, the softness dropping away so fast it was almost impressive to watch, like a stage curtain falling. "Why do we need to make this into some kind of legal thing? We're their parents. We can handle this like adults, without lawyers getting rich off our family." "We'll both need lawyers," I said, and I stood up, and I walked out, and my hands were shaking so badly by the time I reached my truck that I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. One more thing happened before I hired anyone, something that still bothers me more than almost any other single moment in this entire mess. In early August, Vanessa called in a panic, actual panic, the kind that doesn't sound rehearsed even when you've learned to doubt everything. Lily had a fever, she said, a high one, and the pediatrician wanted an urgent visit that insurance wouldn't fully cover, an out-of-pocket charge of $310 due before they'd even see her. I drove to an ATM at 10 at night and transferred the money within 11 minutes of hanging up. I found out 3 weeks later, from a stray comment Lily made about the doctor with the fish tank, that the visit in question had been a routine well check, scheduled a month in advance, fully covered under our insurance plan with no copay at all. I checked the actual claim through our insurance portal. $0 owed. I sat with that for a long time, turning it over, trying to find an innocent explanation. I never found one. That was the moment I understood, really understood, that nothing was off limits to her anymore. Not even a sick kid. Not even a fever that wasn't real. I hired a lawyer the next morning. His name was Grant Whitfield, a family law attorney with an office off Route 33, and a reputation, according to 2 people I asked, for not backing down once he had the facts on his side. I brought him a binder, 6 months of screen-recorded videos, texts with timestamps, a spreadsheet of every payment above the court order, totaling $9,140 by that point, soon to be more. He watched every clip without saying a word, his jaw tightening a little more with each one. When he finished, he closed the laptop and looked at me for a long moment. "This isn't just a support dispute," he said. "This looks like coaching, combined with financial extortion. You may have grounds for a custody modification, and depending on what else we find, reimbursement, possibly more." He filed within the week. Quick pause from the story. If you enjoy these stories, consider taking a listen to our Spotify show linked in the description for early access to new stories and better audio quality. Now back to the video. The court appointed a guardian ad litem named Renee Park to represent Owen and Lily's interests directly, separate from either of us. Renee was thorough in a way that made me nervous even though I had nothing to hide. She interviewed the kids twice, separately, at a child advocacy center off Riverside Drive with cameras in the corners and toys arranged like a therapist's waiting room. She reviewed the videos Grant had submitted. She requested school records for both children. 2 days after her first visit, Owen's school counselor, a woman named Priya Anand, called me directly. During a routine wellness check-in, Owen had mentioned the crying game without any prompting. He described it to her the way a kid describes a chore he's gotten tired of, something he did because his mom asked him to, something that made her happy when he did it well. Priya documented the conversation and, per her legal obligation, forwarded it to Renee Park's office that same afternoon. A week later, Lily's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Okafor, sent a note home describing an incident on the playground. Lily had been overheard coaching a classmate on how to cry for a toy the other child wanted. "You have to look really, really sad," Lily reportedly told her, complete with a demonstration. "Then sometimes you get things." Mrs. Okafor, alarmed by the specificity of it, wrote up an incident report and included it in the file. The evidence kept accumulating on its own, almost faster than Grant could organize it. Renee observed a custody exchange in the parking lot of Owen's school in early October and noted in her report that Vanessa's expression shifted the instant the children turned their backs to walk toward my truck, the warmth in her face dropping away like a mask coming off, replaced by something flat and tired that she clearly didn't intend anyone to see. 6 weeks after the filing, a court-appointed psychologist named Dr. Elaine Ford completed a full evaluation of both children. Her report ran 23 pages. I read it twice. She wrote in careful clinical language that Vanessa had engaged in a pattern of using the children as instruments for financial gain, and that Lily in particular showed early signs of emotional emotional dysregulation tied to confusion between performed and genuine feeling that she had, in Dr. Ford's words, difficulty distinguishing authentic distress from rehearsed distress, a distinction most children her age have no reason to need. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Then came the piece none of us expected, the detail that recontextualized 6 months of demands into something even worse than I'd understood. Grant's paralegal, doing routine due diligence ahead of the hearing, ran a reverse image search on a few frames from Vanessa's videos, standard practice, apparently, to check for reposted or stolen content that might complicate the case. Instead, the search turned up something else, entirely. The same footage, nearly identical to what Vanessa had been sending me week after week, existed publicly on a monetized crowdfunding page under the name Mama Strong Ohio. I found the account myself that night at my kitchen table at 11:40 on a Tuesday. It had built a following over 8 months, nearly 6,000 followers, dozens of posts, all of them Owen and Lily, crying, asking for help, captioned with a story about a single mother struggling to make ends meet after an absent, uncaring father cut off support. The page linked to a donation fund. The running total, visible right there on the page, read $38,420. I scrolled through the comments until my eyes burned. Strangers, hundreds of them, sending $20, $50, telling Vanessa she was a hero, telling Owen and Lily they deserved better, telling her they were praying for her. People who had nothing to do with our lives, who believed every word of a story that wasn't true, opening their wallets for a version of me that didn't exist. A man who'd walked away from his kids, who'd let them go hungry, who didn't care. I wasn't the only one Vanessa had been extorting. I was just the one who happened to already know her. I called Grant at midnight. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he'd been half expecting a call like this eventually, the way experienced lawyers seem to expect the worst version of a story before it arrives. I read him comments off the screen, my voice flatter than I felt. A woman named Deb from Marietta, Ohio, who said she'd sent $40 because Lily's face reminded her of her own granddaughter. A man who'd sent $200 in a single donation with a comment that just said, "Stay strong, Dad's loss is your gain." I read that one twice before I could make myself stop. "This changes the shape of the case," Grant said. "Up to now, this was a family court matter, a support dispute, coaching, maybe extortion between two parties who used to be married. This is different. This is potential wire fraud, solicitation under false pretenses, and depending on how the platform's terms of service are written, possibly bank fraud if funds moved through certain channels. I need to bring in someone who handles this side of things." He paused. "Mark, I want you to hear this clearly. None of this is your fault. You didn't miss something obvious. People who are good at this are good at it because it doesn't look like what it is." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table until the sky outside turned gray, scrolling through 8 months of strangers being lied to by a woman I used to fall asleep next to. Grant filed everything with the court within days: the psychologist's report, the school records, Renee Park's observations, and now the crowdfunding page, screenshotted and archived before it could disappear. Mediation was scheduled for the following month, presided over by a retired judge named Walter Combs, a man in his 60s with a slow, deliberate way of speaking that made every question he asked land like a verdict already halfway decided. We met in a conference room on the 4th floor of an office building downtown, both sides with their attorneys, Renee Park present as well, representing the children's interests directly. Vanessa wore a navy blazer that morning, the kind of outfit chosen to look modest and sympathetic. She sat with her hands folded, her lawyer, a woman named Denise Cho, beside her with a legal pad and an expression I couldn't read. Walter Combs opened his laptop and turned the screen so everyone could see. He played the video of Lily holding a handwritten sign that read, "Daddy won't help us," her face streaked with tears, the caption underneath asking for donations toward essentials. "Ms. Cole?" Walter said, his voice even unhurried. "Did a 5-year-old write that sign herself?" Vanessa's mouth opened. Nothing came out for a moment. "I helped her with the spelling," she finally said. And the tears? Silence. He didn't wait long for an answer. He laid a printed page beside the laptop, a receipt from a spa on Bridge Street, $340, dated the same week as a text demanding emergency money for Lily's winter coat. Beside that, another receipt, a handbag, $305, purchased the same day Vanessa had texted me that Owen had nothing warm to wear to school. "These are old," Vanessa said. "You're taking things out of context." "I'm reading dates off your own bank statements, which your attorney provided during discovery," Walter said. "There's very little context that changes a date." Denise Cho asked for a short recess. When they returned 20 minutes later, Walter laid out a proposed settlement: primary custody transferred to me, supervised visitation for Vanessa, pending a compliance period with Dr. Ford's recommendations, and reimbursement of the $9,840 in extortion payments, plus attorney's fees. Denise Cho rejected all of it before Vanessa had even finished reading the page. "My client believes she can present a stronger case in front of an actual judge," she said, chin up, voice steady in a way that made me think even then that she believed it. "We'll see everyone at the hearing." The hearing was set for 3 weeks out. 5 days before it, at 11 at night, my phone lit up with an email that broke every rule Grant Grant had explicitly told Vanessa's side not to break. No direct contact outside of counsel, no informal negotiation, nothing that could be construed as pressure. The subject line read, "Please read this before court." I opened it anyway. I told myself I wouldn't respond, only read. 3 long paragraphs of apology and justification. The same arguments I'd already heard. She was doing her best. I didn't understand how hard it was. I was punishing her for loving our children too much. Then, near the bottom, one line stopped my breath entirely. "If you go through with this, I will tell the judge things about you that will end any chance you ever see them again." I read it 4 times. My hands weren't steady. I had no idea what she meant. I hadn't hit anyone, hadn't cheated, hadn't missed a support payment, hadn't done a single thing in 8 years of marriage or 2 years of divorce that I could imagine warranting a sentence like that. I forwarded it to Grant at 11:15 without adding a word of my own. He called me back 9 minutes later. "Don't respond," he said. "Don't call her. This email just handed us exactly what we needed. Direct evidence of intimidation 5 days before a custody hearing. Save everything. We'll deal with the threat in front of Walter Combs, on the record, where it belongs." The hearing took place on a Thursday in November, in a courtroom smaller than I expected, wood-paneled, a flag in the corner, Walter Combs presiding with the same unhurried patience he'd shown in mediation. Vanessa arrived with Denise Cho, and for the first time in this entire process, with her mother, Judith Cole, sitting 1 row back, not beside Vanessa, I noticed, but slightly apart, arms crossed, face unreadable. Grant introduced the email first. Vanessa's threat, read aloud in a courtroom, sounded even worse than it had on my phone at midnight. Vague, cornered, the words of someone reaching for a weapon she didn't actually have. Walter asked her directly, under oath, what specifically she intended to tell the court about me. Vanessa's lawyer objected. Walter overruled her and asked again. The room went quiet. Vanessa looked at her mother. Judith didn't look back. "I don't have anything specific," Vanessa finally said, her voice small in a way I hadn't heard from her in years. "I just wanted him to stop." "To stop what, exactly?" Walter asked. "To stop taking my children away from me." Grant stood then, calm, unhurried, the way he'd been through the entire process. "Your Honor, my client hasn't taken anything. Ms. Cole used her own children to solicit nearly $40,000 from strangers online, in addition to extorting nearly $10,000 from her ex-husband, using fabricated stories of hardship that a licensed psychologist has determined are actively harming both children's emotional development. If anyone in this room needs to answer for what's been taken, Your Honor, I'd suggest it isn't Mr. Delaney." I watched something shift across the courtroom. Not just Walter Combs's expression, though that hardened too, but Denise Cho's posture beside her own client, a small, almost imperceptible lean away. Judith Cole closed her eyes. I stood when Walter asked if I wanted to address the court directly. I hadn't planned what to say. I said it anyway. "I paid every request for 6 months because I was afraid of what would happen to my kids if I didn't," I said. "I found out my daughter thinks crying is a game you play for prizes. I found out my son thinks I skip meals to survive. Whatever Vanessa needs to believe about why she did this, the truth is simple. She didn't lose her children because of anything I did in this courtroom. She lost them the day she decided their tears were worth more to her than their trust." Vanessa didn't look at me. She looked at the table in front of her, and for the first time since I'd known her, I couldn't tell if what I saw in her face was real or performed, and I understood, with a kind of sadness I hadn't expected, that I would probably never be able to tell again. Before Walter Combs adjourned to consider his ruling, Renee Park asked to be heard, a request he granted without hesitation given her role in the case. She spoke for maybe 4 minutes, no notes, her voice steady in a way that made the whole room go still. She described her interviews with Owen and Lily in plain, careful language. No embellishment, nothing that reached beyond what the children had actually told her. She described Lily's difficulty, weeks into the process, understanding that she was allowed to simply feel sad without also performing sadness for someone watching. She described Owen asking her, during their second interview, whether he was in trouble for telling. "He asked me that twice," Renee said. "A 7-year-old worried he'd get in trouble for being honest with an adult whose entire job is protecting him. In my professional opinion, that single detail says more about the environment these children have been living in than any financial record in this case. And there are a great many financial records in this case." She looked at Walter Combs directly. "I recommend the court act decisively. These children need to relearn as quickly as possible that honesty doesn't carry a cost." Denise Cho didn't cross-examine her. I noticed that. I don't think there was anything left to ask. Walter Combs ruled from the bench that same afternoon, rather than taking the matter under advisement, which Grant told me afterward was unusual, and in his professional opinion, a sign of exactly how little doubt the judge had. Primary custody transferred to me effective immediately. Vanessa's visitation dropped to supervised sessions twice a week, 4 hours each, conducted through a family services agency on Olentangy River Road, contingent on completing a parenting evaluation and a minimum of 12 sessions with a licensed therapist. She was ordered to repay the $9,840 in extorted funds within 18 months, plus $4,200 toward my attorney's fees. Walter also noted on the record that the $38,400 $420 raised through the Mama Strong Ohio account fell outside his jurisdiction, but that he was required to refer the matter to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for review, given the potential fraud implicated in soliciting donations under false pretenses from the general public. That referral turned into its own slow-moving process over the following months. A detective named Osei from the Financial Crimes Unit contacted me twice for statements. I learned through that process things I hadn't known even after 6 months of quietly building a case. The Mama Strong Ohio account wasn't entirely Vanessa's creation. It belonged, at least administratively, to a man named Derek Holloway, someone I'd never met, someone Vanessa had apparently been seeing since around the time the videos started getting more elaborate, better lit, better framed. Derek ran a small social media consulting business out of his apartment in Grandview Heights, the kind of operation that helped local businesses grow follower counts and, evidently, helped at least one ex-wife monetize her own children's manufactured distress. Detective Osei's report indicated Derek and Vanessa had split donation proceeds roughly 60-40 in his favor, in exchange for his editing, posting schedule, and audience growth strategy. I found out about Derek the same week Owen mentioned, offhand, over dinner at my apartment, that Mommy's friend sometimes came over to help count money from her online friends. Owen was 7. He said it the way kids say anything adults do that doesn't make sense to them yet. Matter of fact, unbothered, more interested in his mac and cheese than in the sentence he'd just handed me. I didn't react in front of him. I texted Grant the second Owen went to bed. Derek disappeared from Vanessa's life within about 6 weeks of the referral going through, whether out of self-preservation, legal advice from his own attorney, or something closer to guilt. I never found out and honestly stopped caring to. Detective Osei's final report, delivered to Vanessa's attorney the following spring, resulted in a deferred prosecution agreement rather than formal charges, restitution to the platform's identified donors, where possible, totaling just over $31,000 of the $38,420 raised, plus a permanent ban from the crowdfunding platform itself. No jail time. I won't pretend I wasn't angry about that for a while. Grant told me gently that these cases rarely end the way people expect, and that the custody outcome, the part that actually protected Owen and Lily going forward, mattered more than any additional consequence I might have wanted for Vanessa personally. I believed him. I still believe him. Some days it was still hard to sit with. The fallout inside the family sorted people faster than I expected. Judith Cole, Vanessa's mother, called me 2 weeks after the hearing. The first time she'd called me directly in the 2 years since the divorce. She asked to see the kids. I said yes, without hesitation. Owen and Lily loved their grandmother, and nothing about what Vanessa had done was Judith's fault. Over coffee at my kitchen table, Judith told me she'd suspected something for months, that Vanessa had always had a gift for making a room feel sorry for her, as she put it, going back to childhood, and that she'd hoped, foolishly, it would stay a personality quirk rather than something she'd use on her own children. I should have said something sooner, Judith told me. I kept telling myself it wasn't my business. She started attending the supervised visitation sessions as a support person for Vanessa, not to defend what her daughter had done, she said, but because Owen and Lily still needed a grandmother who showed up steady, regardless of what their mother had chosen. Vanessa's younger sister Claire took a harder line. She unfollowed Vanessa on every platform within a week of the story becoming, briefly, local news, a segment on Channel 10 about the crowdfunding fraud investigation. Vanessa's face blurred, but her name printed in the Chiron regardless, since court records were public. Claire texted me once, unprompted, just to say she was sorry for what the kids had been through, and that she hoped I knew not everyone in Vanessa's family was cut from the same cloth. I appreciated it more than I told her at the time. Vanessa's friend group, the ones who'd liked and commented and shared Our Sweet Delaney Life for years, split roughly down the middle. Some stood by her, insisting the media had twisted an innocent mother's story, that everyone struggles sometimes and no one should be crucified for asking for help. Others went quiet, the kind of quiet that speaks for itself. No public statements, just a slow unfollowing, a slow absence from her life that I only knew about because Owen mentioned sometimes that so-and-so's mom used to come to the house and didn't anymore. A local Facebook group, one of those neighborhood pages with 11,000 members that Vanessa had posted in occasionally over the years, picked the story up within days of the Channel 10 segment airing. Someone recognized the trampoline park in an old photo and connected the dots publicly, and for about 2 weeks, the comment section became something I couldn't make myself stop reading, even though nothing good ever came from it. Most of it was strangers arguing with other strangers about a woman none of them actually knew. A few comments came from people who did know her, an old college roommate who wrote that she always had a flair for the dramatic, but never thought it'd go this far. A former co-worker from the event planning firm who simply wrote, "This tracks," and nothing else. I closed the app after that one, and didn't open it again for a month. My own workplace found out eventually too, not through anything I said, but through the same local news segment. My supervisor, a woman named Carla Jimenez, called me into her office the following Monday, and I braced myself for an awkward conversation about professionalism or optics. Instead, she closed the door, sat down across from me, and told told me her own brother had gone through something similar with visitation years earlier. She adjusted my project assignments for the next several months without my having to ask twice, kept me local, kept me off the 2 out-of-state jobs that would have required overnight travel during a stretch when Owen and Lily needed as much stability as I could give them. I hadn't expected kindness from that direction. I've tried not to take it for granted since. Owen's sessions with Dr. Whitaker surfaced something I hadn't fully appreciated until I heard it secondhand. Around the 4th session, Owen told her that part of him had liked being filmed at first, that it felt like a game, like he was helping his mom the way a superhero helps someone. It was only later, he said, that the game stopped feeling like a game and started feeling like a job he didn't remember agreeing to. Dr. Whitaker explained to me afterward, in a separate parent session, that this was common and important to normalize rather than shame, that Owen needed to understand the difference between being tricked and being foolish, that a 7-year-old trusting his own mother was never foolishness. I wrote that sentence down on a sticky note and kept it on my refrigerator for months. Vanessa made a handful of desperate moves in the weeks after the ruling. The kind of moves Grant warned me were common in cases like ours. A person losing control reaching for whatever leverage remains, however thin. She called the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services and requested a welfare check on my apartment, claiming anonymously at first, though the caseworker later confirmed the source, that I kept the kids in an unsafe environment. The caseworker who came, a calm woman named Beatrice, walked through my 2-bedroom apartment on Sawyer Street, checked the smoke detectors, asked Owen and Lily a few gentle questions while I waited in the kitchen, and closed the case within a week, finding nothing remotely concerning. Vanessa also petitioned, through Denise Cho, for an emergency modification hearing 3 months after the initial ruling, arguing that my work travel schedule made me an unfit primary custodian. Walter Combs denied the motion without even scheduling a full hearing, citing a lack of any new evidence since his original ruling. Vanessa also tried, through a new attorney after Denise Cho withdrew from the case in December, citing what her withdrawal letter called irreconcilable differences regarding case strategy, to appeal Walter Combs' ruling directly. The appeal cost her, by my rough estimate based on what Grant told me about typical rates in Franklin County, somewhere north of $8,000 in fresh legal fees, money she likely didn't have, given the restitution she still owed both me and the crowdfunding platform's identified donors. The appellate panel declined to hear the case in February, finding no procedural error in the original ruling and no new evidence that hadn't already been available to Vanessa's counsel at the time. Grant said, reading me the denial over the phone, that appellate courts rarely disturb a family court ruling this well documented, and that filing anyway, at that cost, with that little chance of success, told him more about Vanessa's state of mind than any psychological evaluation could. Each move cost her something: credibility with the court, goodwill with Renee Park, who remained involved through a 6-month follow-up period, and I suspect whatever fragile trust Judith and Claire still extended her. By the following spring, the supervised visitation sessions had stabilized into something almost calm. Vanessa completed her 12 therapy sessions. Dr. Ford's follow-up evaluation noted improvement, cautious but real, in Vanessa's ability to separate her own emotional needs from decisions affecting the children. I don't know if that's true in any lasting sense. I know the visitation sessions I've observed from a distance, dropping the kids off, picking them up, look calmer than anything I saw in the 6 months before the hearing. The restitution order forced a change in Vanessa's life that nothing else had managed to. With the Lexus lease gone, canceled within 2 months of the ruling once the reimbursement and legal fees made the payment impossible, and with the crowdfunding platform's donor restitution eating into whatever savings remained, Vanessa took a job in March at a marketing firm off Polaris Parkway, an actual 9-to-5 with an actual paycheck, the first steady employment she'd held since Owen was born. Judith mentioned it to me once, almost proud, almost apologetic about being proud, as if she wasn't sure whether I'd want to hear it. I told her honestly that I did. Whatever else was true about Vanessa, I wanted her to land somewhere stable, not for her sake alone, but because Owen and Lily needed a mother who wasn't circling the drain of her own decisions every time they saw her. The first Christmas after the ruling, Vanessa's supervised session fell on December 23rd, 2 hours at the Family Services Building on Olentangy River Road, a caseworker present the entire time. Lily came home and told me, unprompted, that Mommy had given her a real present this time, a set of watercolor paints, no camera, no unwrapping video, just paints on a table and Vanessa helping her mix colors for 20 quiet minutes. I don't know what to do with a detail like that, except hold it carefully. It doesn't undo anything. It doesn't earn back the year before it, but I choose to believe it means something, that some smaller, truer version of parenting survived underneath everything else, and that my children might still get pieces of it going forward, supervised and limited as those pieces are for now. I want to be honest about something else, something I didn't expect to feel and couldn't explain to anyone but Grant, who'd seen enough of these cases to recognize it without me needing to spell it out. Somewhere in the middle of that first winter after the ruling, sorting through a box of old photographs I hadn't touched since the divorce, I found a picture from our our honeymoon. Vanessa laughing on a beach in the Outer Banks, sunburned, genuinely happy, nothing performed about it at all. I sat on my apartment floor and cried for almost 20 minutes, not because I wanted her back, not because any part of me doubted the ruling, but because somewhere between that photograph and the courtroom, a person I'd once loved had become someone capable of teaching her own 5-year-old to fake tears for ice cream. I mourned that woman on the beach. She was gone long before the videos started, probably, but I hadn't let myself notice until I had no choice left. I called my brother that night, the same brother I hadn't told about any of this until the case was already 6 months deep, and I apologized to him for keeping it from him for so long. He didn't ask why, he just stayed on the phone with me for almost 2 hours, mostly in silence, the kind of silence that only works between people who've known each other their whole lives. Toward the end of the call, he said something I've thought about often since. "You're not grieving her, man. You're grieving the story you told yourself about her. Those aren't the same person, and it's okay to bury them separately." I didn't have anything to say back to that. I just thanked him and told him I loved him, and I meant both things more than I usually let myself say out loud. There were logistical headaches too, the unglamorous kind no one mentions when they imagine winning a case like this. I had to adjust my work travel schedule permanently, turning down 2 promotions in 18 months because they required regional oversight and more time on the road than a single custodial parent could manage. I enrolled Owen in a different after-school program closer to my apartment at a cost of $340 a month I hadn't budgeted for. I spent $2,100 on a family therapist named Dr. Whitaker Grant had recommended, someone experienced specifically in helping kids process manipulation and coach deception. Not because Owen and Lily were broken, but because I didn't trust myself to undo what 6 months of the crying game had taught them without professional help. Insurance covered about 60%. I paid the rest without complaint because it was the first money I'd spent in over a year that felt like it was actually protecting them instead of quietly funding someone else's dishonesty. It's been a little over a year now since Walter Combs read his ruling from the bench. Owen is 8. Lily just turned 6 last month. A small party at my apartment with 6 of her classmates and a cake shaped like a unicorn that I very badly attempted to frost myself. Vanessa still sees them twice a week, supervised, and by every account those visits go well. I don't know what's real in her anymore, and I've made peace mostly with never knowing for certain. Some questions don't get answers. You learn to live around the shape of them instead. Last month, Lily fell off her bike in the parking lot outside my apartment and split her knee open on the pavement. She cried, really cried, the kind of crying that has no performance in it at all, snot and hiccups and her whole small body shaking against my shoulder while I carried her inside. I knew instantly it was real. I knew it the way you know your own name. Somewhere in the last year, without either of us saying it out loud, I'd relearned how to tell the difference, and so, I think, had she. Owen started 3rd grade this fall at a new school closer to my place, and I still remember standing in the pickup line on the first day, watching him walk out with a friend he'd made in the first week, laughing at something I'd never know the punchline to, and feeling a kind of ordinary happiness I hadn't let myself expect a year earlier. He plays goalkeeper on his rec league team now instead of forward, a position change he chose himself because, in his words, he likes being the last one who stops something bad from happening. I didn't say anything when he told me that. I just told him I was proud of him and drove us both to get ice cream, the real kind, no camera, no caption, just a Tuesday. I still get a knot in my stomach sometimes when my phone buzzes on a Sunday night, an old reflex from 6 months of dread I doubt will ever fully leave me. Most of the time now it's nothing, a picture Owen sent from his mom's house of a Lego set he finished, a reminder about Lily's dentist appointment, ordinary things. I've learned to let the knot pass through me without believing it anymore. That's the thing nobody warns you about going through something like this. It isn't just the money, though the money was real. $9,140 in extortion, $38,420 pulled from strangers who believed a lie, thousands more in therapy and legal fees and a career trajectory I quietly set aside. It's not even really about the custody outcome, as much as I'm grateful for it every single day. It's about what it costs 2 small children to learn, at 5 and 7 years old, that tears can be a currency. It's about how long it takes to teach them, gently, patiently, one real cry and one real laugh at a time, that feelings aren't a transaction, that you don't have to perform sadness to be loved, that someone can just show up for you, steady, without needing a camera pointed at your face first. I think about the title I'd put on this story if I ever told it out loud to a stranger. My ex-wife trained our 2 small children to sob and beg on camera just to squeeze extra cash out of me every single week, until I finally caught her cruel game and turned the tables. It's accurate. It's also incomplete the way headlines usually are. It doesn't capture the 20 minutes I spent crying on my apartment floor over a honeymoon photograph. It doesn't capture Judith Cole showing up steady for grandchildren who needed at least one adult in that family who hadn't let them down. It doesn't capture the ache of loving someone for 8 years and realizing all at once that you never really knew the difference between who they were and who they were pretending to be, and wondering some nights whether you'd been performing performing something yourself just to keep the peace. Owen doesn't remember much of it now, or says he doesn't. The way kids compress hard years into something smaller and more manageable than what actually happened. Lily still has Mr. Buttons. She doesn't rehearse anything with him anymore, as far as I can tell. Mostly she just tells him about her day, the real one, unremarkable and small and true. Some nights, after they're both asleep, I still open that folder on my laptop, the one I built at 2 in the morning during the worst stretch of this, the videos and the texts and the spreadsheet of every dollar. I haven't deleted it. Grant told me to keep it indefinitely in case anything ever resurfaces in family court, and I followed that advice, but I think there's another reason I haven't closed that folder for good. I think I need it sometimes, as proof that I didn't imagine any of it, that the version of events I lived through actually happened the way I remember it happening. Vanessa was good enough at bending reality that even now, a year removed from all of it, I sometimes need the receipts just to trust my own memory. That's its own kind of cost, one nobody puts a dollar figure on in a courtroom. What I want for Owen and Lily, more than anything else I could name, is for neither of them to ever need a folder like that about anyone they love. I want them to grow up trusting their own read of a room, their own sense of when something feels wrong, without a court order and a psychologist's report to eventually confirm what they already suspected. I think that's the real work now, the part that doesn't end when a judge signs a form, teaching 2 small kids, slowly, ordinarily, across 1,000 unremarkable Tuesdays, that they're allowed to trust what they feel. I caught her cruel game in the end. I turned the tables the way the title promises, but I didn't win anything. Not really. Not in the way winning is supposed to feel. I just got my children back to a place where their tears belong to them again, where sadness is something you feel instead of something you sell. That's not a triumph. It's just the truth. Finally standing where a lie used to be. And some nights that's the only kind of peace this story was ever going to offer.